I haven't gotten it yet.
What? It's just a link, but it's called Mobility and Medieval Plate
I got it.
Armor.
It's about 50 pounds.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Now, not quite the image.
All right, so I'm going to take that.
It's informative in a number of ways. Also, these aren't just average people that just throw some stuff on and do it. So obviously, training is
Right, no, exactly.
We're live!
It's about 50 pounds.
training a pesky topic.
Good morning, everybody. We're getting started here in just a couple of minutes. And welcome. And welcome. Hey, good to see you. Many of the usuals, you guys are up early, you crazy people. Is that right? Are we kicking off the morning with 42? Nah, it dropped 18. I knew that couldn't be right. Twitch was doing its thing. But still, great. We got 18 people in already at 6 a.m. Yeah, cup of coffee number 2 happening here. And we are quite mad. The mad chatters. Hey, Patrick. It should be a fun topic today. As you can see, I am on the, not, you can't see now, but as you can see on the announcement, I'm joined today by Tim, the ever mysterious Tim, who also replaced the mysterious John, who vanished last night and was supposed to be on the After Dark. And Tim,
That was mysterious.
yeah, that was very mysterious. I wanted to outmatch Tim. And then, of course, as always, I've got Evelyn, and then we're going to be joined today also by both Vivi and also the Dion's Quest, and also by Mike Disney. It's going to be great to have Mike on. He is always fun. Give this just another moment.
Tunes are rocking.
Right?
Yeah, these are the rockin' tunes of one Adrian von Ziegler. I shout him out pretty regularly because he makes all of his content available for use, license-free music on YouTube, and he's got hours and hours of great medieval Celtic, some with darker tones, some with more lilting tones. Check him out, Adrian von Ziegler on YouTube, and great license-free music. All right, I'm gonna kick us off, and let me see if I get the right one here. Should be this one. And there we go. Everybody looks good on a Saturday morning at 6 a.m. 7 if you're on the Eastern time zone. And then if, of course, you're in California right now, it's 4 a.m. What are you doing? So thank you very much.
They're being here for our very important Loremaster's Arcanum is what they're doing.
Exactly. So it's going to be a fun topic today. We're going to be ranging across a number of different subjects, but really focused in on ancient armor, weaponry, techniques of the Middle Ages that were used. Some of the things which are so influential in our D&D games, irrespective. What I like about this topic, Tim, is that it is it's not based on the edition that you run. I don't care if you're playing Pathfinder, if you're playing D&D 1e through 5e, if you're playing Castles and Crusades, it doesn't matter which game system that you're playing, these subjects are relevant to you because it's not really about rules. It's about the lore and the history, and then how they influence the game. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Tim,
you sound a little low. You sound a little low. Sound.
Do I sound low to you? How about to you, Evelyn?
You're a little quiet. I have you turned up in my headset so I can hear you. But...
Okay, well that doesn't normally happen, does it? So let's see here. This is that one, and that one it was turned. Does that sound better? Testing, testing, testing.
There you are.
That sounds better?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah, I usually have a mic that I turn down for me because I tend to be too loud. So I guess maybe my 6 a.m. in the morning voice isn't as strong as... well, as evidence, I just said...
full DM power yet.
It's important to warm those things up.
and literally, I just said 6 a.m. in the morning. That tells you how early this stream is because I'm so repetitive. But anyway, welcome everyone, and it's going to be a fun topic as we dive into, ancient armor, ancient weaponry, battle tactics and techniques, some great stories. And while we will all be jumping in, Evelyn has some outstanding background that she'll talk about, which is relevant to the topic. And then we'll have Vivi and Mike Disney that'll pop in, and they're just fun, cool people, but also love D&D. And so it's going to be a nice roundtable discussion that we'll have. Tim is the man of the hour. And anybody in the chat, thank you, Robert. Anybody in the chat, if you want to know why I regard Tim as a strong source of information on this topic, you need simply look at the wall behind him on his video screen. I think that pretty much tells you this. It could be the haircut too. I don't know. Like just all of it bespeaks a love for all things which cut people and bash people.
Don't forget bashing.
Yeah, don't forget bashing.
Very important.
But yeah, bashing will be a topic today, right? Because that's a lot of even where the clerics came from, right, Tim?
Yes.
All right, so let's start off. Let me have both of my guests introduce themselves. I've kind of already talked about them a little bit, but let you tell them who they are. Tell you who they are. Also, anything you guys would like to share on socials or other things that you're doing. And Tim, actually, I think you have something going on today, right?
Yeah, there's something going on. I'm going out to the country.
Tim, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
I am the ever mysterious Tim. I was playing D&D since I was 9, and it's been a couple years since then. And I'm usually gaming with Lord Gazumba, and I was in the military in the army for 22 years, and have an interest in edged weaponry, and have practiced the European swordsmanship as a martial art, and love talking about swords. Sometimes you can't shut me up, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. All right. And yes, thank you for your service, Tim. Absolutely. Evelyn, go ahead. And introduce, in addition to your normal introduction, go ahead and tell us about some of your background as it relates to prop making and some other things that you've done which give you some interesting perspective on this topic.
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Evelyn, if you are new here. I am when theaters are open, I actually work as a professional prop maker and designer. So I have done quite a bit of research on lots of weapons. I used to actually have an entire cabinet full of them at the theater that I worked at. Lots of broadswords and rapiers and parrying daggers and all that fun stuff that I got to play with and maintain, because you have to maintain your weapons, otherwise they rust, and that's a bad thing. And I've done a lot of research and study on various weapons and time periods and all that stuff, which is important to accurately having the right weapon in the right hands at the right time. But other than that, you can find me on social media at Theater Evie. That's THTREVIE. And you can find me basically everywhere at that handle. And I know a little bit about weapons. Probably not as much as Tim does, but I know a little bit.
Excellent. And you can find them on all those socials, and you can see them all the time. Tim is on Lord Gazumba's channel. He's always playing with Jay in his games. They've been friends for a long time. That's why he's wearing the Gazumba logo on his shirt, along with the fact that I haven't gotten his shirt and hoodie out to him yet. So next time he's on one of my LMAs or my games, I trust that Tim will be wearing a Blue Box logo, but he is always
We're a
on
small
Jay's.
fee, yes.
He's always on Jay's channel. And then today, of course, the joke we made earlier, it was a 6 a.m. joke, right? That he does have something going on today. He is running a game right after this. Tim is DMing at 8 Central. So we'll wrap up a little before that today, and you can go right into Tim's game. And Tim, any kind of preview you'd like to give the viewers for the game you're going to run today?
I kind of said it last night, but if anyone missed the late show,
Did anyone miss that? I don't know. Did some maybe? I did.
I gave Jay a little Lord Gazumba a little hint as to what I was going to do and some of the things in my game, and he's just was like, "You are so disturbed." And I also kind of told my dad about it, and he was like, "How do you come up with the stuff like that?" So that's my tidbit.
Okay, so the people will be asking that question today on stream. And Tim did also mention before we kicked off on this show that he's really looking forward to the game because there will be far fewer cheers, the hero points, the specials, because of the way that we're streaming on different channels. And you can do it, but it's just a little bit of a hoop that you have to go through to be able to do it.
And I've eliminated, no one can get specials straight from a person. It's only a hero point per 100. And if the player wants to cash in 10 hero points to get a special, they can.
Gotcha. So for all those reasons and more, Tim is excited about the game today. And yes, I mentioned it earlier, but I do need to make a public apology to Jay, Scott, Lord Gazumba. I was supposed to be on the After Dark show last night, and I literally passed out around 9 o'clock last night and slept right through it. Woke up to shame and guilt. And now public humiliation. But anyway, there it is.
For shame.
For shame. All right.
You made the mistake of sitting down, John. You should have just kept standing.
No, it's so true. So true. All right. So the topic for the day, and we're going to talk about our sponsors. I want to talk about those in a minute, but let's go ahead and get right into the chat today. And I'm going to let you start us off, Tim, with what would you'd say would be one of the most common misunderstandings about the nature of middle-age weaponry and armor. Like when people play D&D, what do you see most often doesn't connect with reality?
The probably biggest misconception is weight.
Mm-hmm.
The weight of weapons is grossly, in at least first edition, it was grossly overstated how heavy the weapons are. And same for the armor. I mean, I think sometimes they think the armor is heavier. Historians will tell you how heavy it is. And then I think sometimes in D&D they forget people are wearing armor. And if you've ever worn it for a little while, it creates effects. So I think weight.
Yeah, and Evelyn, anything you want to add to that?
No, that's accurate.
So, with weight, I think that really jumps right into a topic that I wanted to touch on today. And we kind of touched on this a couple of weeks ago in one of our conversations, Tim. The management of realism versus game and keeping things moving. And we do want to have a connection to reality, at least in the typical D&D game. But we're trying not to make it overly cumbersome. Yes, very much intended, right? So when you take something like armor, if you had a full suit of plate armor, it would probably significantly hinder the amount of additional things you could carry in a way that we don't typically see happen in an actual game. But then, is that fun to play if you're playing a paladin or a cavalier or a fighter that's got a full suit of plate armor? So how do you see that being managed well in a game?
I see that, and I'm guilty of this too, is that it's not managed well at all. Go ahead and get a recurve bow or a longbow. Go ahead, fire a couple of arrows, and then go ahead and just put it on your back. And then pull out another weapon and go ahead and fight with it on your back.
Right.
It's it is not. I mean, a longbow is like 6 feet long anyway, so if it was a short bow, you could probably have it in a bag. I think that makes sense to me. But any long bows where they just, and when I ran the game I ran in charity, the charity stream, if you recall, I didn't let them just throw the bows on their backs.
Right.
They actually, when they had to switch weapons, they dropped their bow off to the side and quickly drew their weapon. And I think that replicates reality. I think there's a reason why bowmen weren't carrying a whole bunch of other stuff historically.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And that to me was an example of a wrinkle put in the mechanics of your game, which added to the game. I didn't feel like that was in any way really, dragging the game down, making it overly technical. I felt like it was something that, in turn made the game more fun. And so I don't see a lot of that happening. With armor, what would a full suit of plate armor typically weigh?
40 to 50 pounds.
So a full...
I mean, actually, like the full plated armor
Yes.
is going to be a little bit lighter than wearing chainmail and throwing plates over the chainmail.
Right.
Like,
Sure.
that would be heavier than the, a custom-made, like extremely fancy custom-made, like you see in a lot of museums, would be lighter than wearing, full chain and throwing some plates over it.
Right. No, that's well said. And so we've got a video we're going to show in a bit. I'll wait for the right moment. We'll show that video that actually shows you what it looks like to wear full plate and try to do something athletic and move around. I want to pause again one more time and just say, this doesn't mean that you need to bog your campaign down with this. All the facts and information that we're going to talk about today, nasty crossbows and historical battle tactics and all these things, they are only meant to inspire, maybe to provoke to thought. You might take one or two things from this discussion and add it to your character, your PC, in terms of how you roleplay, or as a DM. You might tweak a couple of things that you feel work for you to add to your game. So don't feel like, as I think Tim said this the best, it is something we're looking to create that sense of realism, that feeling of realism, not to bog you down with a simulation. This is not a sim, but these things can make the game more fun when they feel more connected and based in reality. All right, so you got your full plate. You've got the chain cuirass. Oftentimes you would be wearing. You could have other types of heavy armors. How did you feel that was handled in, let's say, the 1E stuff? The listed weights, the listed encumbrances, the movement speeds, and then let's pivot from that and let's talk about the weapon speeds. I think that question came from Robert, the weapon speeds that you see published. So go ahead, Tim.
I actually think the weights are pretty good. I think I think they're good enough anyway to, and the speeds are true. I mean, obviously, someone who's really fast could probably burst a little bit faster, as we see in that video. If you're wearing the custom and very well made plate, you could probably move faster than somebody else. But I think it's good. It replicates reality enough.
Gotcha. Evelyn, from your background with weaponry, what do you think of the different uses of blades as it relates to edges, points, people confusing things like what a rapier does? Hey, we are joined by Mike Disney. Good morning, Mike. Good to see you. Mike, the super talented artist, the sponsor for both Blue Box and for Lord Gazumba, and just a dead sexy guy. Good morning, Mike.
Hey, good morning. How are you guys doing? I like that shirt that you got on.
Yeah, you like this?
I don't even have one of those shirts. How the heck?
That is the talented wife, and she might be persuaded to make one more for you, Mike, but that'll probably be it. This sucker was so intricate to create, all the weeding that she had to do. Yeah, she was pretty exhausted after that. But yeah, this is the Overgourd, Mike Disney's creation, and you've seen that featured a lot on our streams. This guy right here, he's beautiful, and you'll be seeing him live in Greyhawk here very soon as well. So thanks for joining us, Tim, or Mike. We're talking about old school armor, weaponry, and battle tactics. And we started off on just the subject of, the weight of armor, how to implement that in D&D. And I was going to Evelyn talk a little bit about weaponry and, blunt weapons versus piercing weapons versus slashing weapons, and some of your thoughts on how those are employed and how they're sometimes misemployed.
Right. Yeah. So, when you're thinking about various blades, you have to remember that some are edged and some are more pointed. Like a rapier, it has I would not say a completely blunt edge, but a blunter edge than like your broadsword or your longsword would. But it does have a nice sharp point on it because they're puncturing weapons. So your broadsword, your long swords and things like that they're going to be your double-edged sharper on both sides, and then you have some blades that are only sharp on one edge as well, like a cutlass, for example, where you wouldn't be able to strike necessarily both directions. Keeping that in mind as the way that the edges work and the functionality and how they were used is important when you're using those things. A lot of people who are using a rapier also would use a parrying dagger to help with as they were fighting, which that dagger was typically the double-edged weapon in that situation. And the really fancy people had their parrying daggers would actually match their rapier with the nice, swoop tilt and all that stuff.
There's no upper limit on how much they're willing to spend.
Yes. Those are the types of things to keep in mind with that. And then, of course, with blunt weapons, you have various, maces and clubs and things that some maces would have, sharper parts to them. Some were completely blunt. It's just kind of a variety in how you want to flavor those things within.
There is a lot of confusion with certain types of swords too, because there's some swords that are thin, and some people will say, "Oh, that's a rapier," but if it actually has edges on it, it's technically not a rapier, really.
Right.
It's a cut and thrust sword, so it's really good at thrusting, but you can still cut with it. But rapiers are generally, they're not sharp. Maybe sharp near the tip where you want to you hit somebody's hand with it, it'll cut them and debilitate them, but it's really a 40-inch spike on your fist. So it's like boxing with a 40-inch spike on. So you really, you want to be able to slip that punch.
Yeah.
And you just taught me something. I guess I've been saying it wrong all my life. It's not rapier. It's rapier.
It's.
I think either or.
Yeah, either or. Yeah.
I was hoping to start a fight.
Ways.
Okay. All right.
I've heard it both ways.
And what is the running speed of a fully laden dwarf?
Very slow.
I do think in D&D, the player characters generally all get the same speeds. I think that stretches it too much, because clearly a 3-foot tall hobbit is not going to run, or halfling is not going to run as fast as a 6-foot tall human.
Right.
Same for dwarves, all that. Well, although I would give the dwarves a bonus, or humans a penalty in a low cave.
Yeah.
A massive penalty. Anyone who's tried to move through something low for long periods of time sucks.
All right, so I want to. That's a great one. I want to talk about that. Let me go to Mike for a second. So, Mike, part of what we've talked about here has been the balance between realism or bogging your game down and making it a simulation. And I think the goal that we want to have as players and DMs is to make it feel as quote unquote real as a fantasy game should in combat, without making it something that's overly encumbered with too many stats and too many numbers and too many restrictions. What are you like in terms of your game style, Mike? You've played for a long time. D&D is very important to you. You and I have talked about what this has meant for you in your own life. What blend of that sort of realism versus just suspension of realism, disbelief, to prevent disrupting his immersion?
I think realism has places definitely in your game. Especially if you want to immerse yourself into the game, you have to have some level of realism in it, some level of believability. Like, how is this going to work? How is that going to work? And even when you put magic in there, you still have to think and use your common sense of really, is this going to be able to be done right now? Can I possibly do this, or with this armor on? There's all kinds of things that you really have to take into play, and I like a DM that really takes all those things into play, because if they don't, then I'm not immersed in the game, and I still have fun, but to me it's just, I won't take the game as serious, because to me, if they're not giving me that level of realism that I want in my game, then I don't know. It just, to me, that it doesn't have that same level of immersion.
Yeah, no, I love that. Tim, did you have something you want to say about that?
I think sometimes if they don't apply a little bit of common sense physics, not real physics, but just common sense physics, it kind of ruins the fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
exactly.
For me, that's just me.
No, I feel the same way.
Me
I really
too.
And by the way, thank you, Patrick. Ancient Gamer cheered 300 bits for morning coffee. We appreciate that. Thanks everybody for being with us so early. And also we got another follower. Thank you, Saint Tauric, for following. You can do that if you go to our channel, and you can click over there and you can follow Blue Box while you're watching on GaryCon. So let's come back to Tim's point a moment ago about leaning over for long periods of time. We often find ourselves in D&D in these things called dungeons. It's even in the name. And when you're in a dungeon, you're not always guaranteed a nice 12-foot clearance for your long sword, and you're not always guaranteed a good 12-foot wide passageway. And I know I've been guilty of this so many times. I think this is the place where realism, you really got to think about how much you want to pull that in, because you could totally change the game if you get that careful about what can be swung in what space. Let me start with you, Evelyn.
Well, I was just actually thinking about our most recent foray into the dwarven mines with Brim, spending half of his time like this because he was too tall for the passageways. And he actually tried to get his sword out a couple of times and found that he could not pull it out because he didn't have enough height.
Yeah, and in that example, as a DM, I felt good about pushing that realism, because not only was it it was a good-sized area, but it was still underground. It was large for dwarves. It was not large for humans, let alone a half ogre with a giant sword. So it just he had to be leaning over. And if you watch that stream, that really was core. What we're talking about right now, space restrictions inside small areas, is principally why Millie died.
Yep.
The beloved Millie, sorry if I just gave a spoiler to anybody, but you should know by now. The beloved Millie, she died because Brim, the half ogre, went through this choke point, my Dwarven Forge terrain that was on the table. I described how narrow this was, this S curve, and then he was blocking this. No one else could get through. They started jostling into each other. It was that level of realism. I felt like, to your point a moment ago, Mike, if you don't have at least that much realism, I don't want to play in the game. That's not overly cumbersome. Yeah. That's just basic necessity. So Tim, I'm going to come to you with that question, because you brought this up. How much is too much? And give us some examples or tips of how we as DMs or players can think about space and weapons and height without bogging our game down.
Right. I think penalties to perception, because if you're wearing your helmet and then you're hunched over, how can you see the ceiling? There could be an opening there. If you're hunched down, you're not going to see it. A little kobold just puts a garrote around your neck and just twists you up. You're like, so I mean, it's really useful for inciting horror, because imagine Brim crawling through something and then getting stuck there, held some way by things that have access to him, and he can't see because he's helmeted or armored and can't hardly move. And that's just, you can create a horrific effect with just kobolds.
Rising water, spiders, you could create all kinds of creepy crawlies,
Rising water. Oh, that is terrifying.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
That's what I'm saying. Stuck
Just-
in some place and closing walls, rising water. Claustrophobia is a huge fear. So,
And then restrict movement, and
Yeah, no, I think, and if somebody were just tuning in and didn't know what this was, hearing people talk like this, restricting movement, rising water, closing walls, and the glee that is in these people's eyes as they're speaking. No, so Began1 said he prefers less realism. He plays to get away from the real world and wants more focus on role play and encounters. And look, I would not argue that at all. I think that is also, escaping fantasy. That's kind of what we're talking about here. I do not
that
want.
is the real world.
Well,
I mean, I haven't fought anybody in the last couple weeks, years. So role playing, it's not role playing; it's interacting. So interacting is very realistic.
yeah. But what about that, Evelyn? Because I think if you watch our stuff, there's a lot of role play. There's tons of role play. There's sessions where there's no combat.
Just roleplay.
Yeah, and there is a lot of escapism, but you need some of that realism, right? That's a leading question, I know, but
To be anchored into a character that you can relate to, yeah. I mean, you have to be able to relate to them at some level, and without, to roleplay them in a fair way, I think. And if there isn't some basis in reality, you're not going to be able to relate to them at all.
I have a good example of lack of realism and how kind of like. How about the movie Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon? Anyone get really pent up about the fight scene of them leaping across the trees? They're like hopping on treetops.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, anyone
Well,
go like, oh, who's gonna win?
that's okay.
No one cares. No one cares.
It
Oh,
was-
they're
it was
hopping
still-
on treetops.
It was still a
Wow.
cool fight scene, Tim. I mean, it's kung fu, man. They can do what they want to do. All right, so I'm going to come to Mike in a second on a sort of a related question. And I'm not going to pigeonhole you on the topic of painting today, Mike, because I want your broader thoughts on D&D and role play. I think you've got so much experience. But I'd be foolish not to have Mike Disney on and not talk about armor when it comes to miniatures. And so I'd like you to think a little bit. I'll come to you right after this question for Tim. When you're painting minis and metallics, armors, like what do you think of in terms of realism? What do you think of in terms of basic technique? I know that's a session you could run for hours on, but just maybe 2 or 3 tips when it comes to painting armor if you wanted to make it period specific that you might do. Now, Tim, to you, we talked a little bit about rising water, curving walls, height restrictions. There are some other interesting things that can really fit into role play when you understand how the actual stuff worked in, let's say, the 1400s. And one of them that came to mind for me, I didn't realize till I was in London a couple of years ago. And I was walking through some of the castles and the White Tower. And I would like in the chat, by the way, anybody pop questions in the chat that you have for these great guests. And if you have any notes on these types of things that may be something we're not talking about, here's an easily implemented thing that I think is fun. Probably all of you know this. I don't know why I didn't until a couple of years ago, but most times in the castles, they would have those curved stairwells that would spiral, and they would
Knew you were gonna say
spiral,
that.
right? So the right arm was available to you as you went down. If you were coming up, that curve was right there in your way. You'd have to have your weapon in your left arm. Just that one thing, how significantly that can change combat for someone who is more like right-handedness is 90 something, whatever it is of the population. So if all your life, you've practiced with this hand as your primary hand for your blade, and then you're going up a curved stairwell, and now you got to switch to your left hand. That's a neat little tip that when you're trying to storm a castle could be relevant. Tim, thoughts?
Well, they were smart people. They knew what success was, and not only are you fighting against that central column and trying to get around it. I wouldn't switch if I wasn't practiced in it. I would just, try to get as close as I can to get my weapon in play. But you're also fighting uphill, and and they have more freedom of movement. I mean, it's perfect. That's why defenders always, they have an advantage. That's why you always attack with way more people than are defending.
Yeah, no, I think that's well said. Tim or Evelyn, anything you wanted to say on that subject? All right. Mike, so Mike, talk to us about armor and realism with armor and painting.
Well, it depends on what you're looking for. There's several different techniques, and I try to make, I paint in a rather cartoony style sometimes, but I paint realistically as well. Like when I'm using true metallic metal, which is the paint that has metallic flake inside of the acrylic paint and the pigment. Usually what I'll do is I'll start off with with silver metal for armor. I'll start off with a black base coat and then take the silver metallic paint and paint it on the most highest recesses pretty much all over the armor, but I don't want to get it into the black recesses, where it'll take away the shadows, and that way it'll give it more depth, and then you'll start seeing it really pop out. And then maybe I'll take a little light dry brushing to the most raised edges of the armor to make it look polished a little bit. But that would be for a fighter or a cavalier. I'd like to make that armor nice and shiny, and of course there's armors that people wore back there that was just decorative armor. Then there was armor that they went to battle in, and then there's all kinds of there's what are you going to put gold trim on? I would do that for like a decorative piece. I wouldn't do that for somebody that's in a battle stance or something like that. There's all kinds of different things you can think of. And if you want to work on battered armor, you could do the same technique what I'm thinking of, but instead of painting strokes to do your highlights, you can kind of dab it. You can pixel it, you know what I mean?
Right.
Use pointillism, I mean pixel.
Yeah.
But you could just dab it and spot it and make your armor look battered in certain areas.
Mike, do you have any examples of minis that you've done like that? If you can pop them in my Discord, I'll pull them up on screen. If you have any pictures of armor that you've done that has any of those effects, we could share with the audience, because I know they'd love to see it.
I will have to search for it. I've got quite the library of pics, so definitely I can do some searching.
It would have been a lot better if I would have told you I was going to ask you that in advance, huh?
It could. I would have had quite a few pictures prepared for you. That's for sure.
All right. Well, whatever you want to show off, send it to me, because I would like to show some of your work. Now, just a quick follow-up question for you, Mike. And there's a couple other really good questions in the chat I want to get to. Patrick asked if you ever gravitate more toward figures that are more realistic with the weaponry, or it sounds like, because I know you do a lot of stuff that is more creative and less realistic. Do you not gravitate toward minis that have a more realistic armor and weaponry?
It depends on what I'm doing. Most of my stuff is commission based, so like if I'm doing D&D miniatures, I will go more towards realistic. It depends on what the person wants, but mainly people want their D&D minis. They don't want them looking cartoony. They want them looking, realistic, unless they're a cartoony character. You know what I mean? So, because there's the furry races now that they have in D&D. I don't know exactly what all they're called. I'm sorry, but and I painted some of those, and some of them do want it a little bit more cartoony, a little bit more edge highlighting to it, a little bit more contrast. But for mainly for D&D miniatures, I go more towards the realistic.
I like the reference to the furry races. I've not heard it put that way. That's great.
Well, I don't know what else to call. I don't really know what their names are, because I don't play them. I play dwarves and I play one elf. So those are the races I play. What are they?
The Tabaxi?
Tabaxi, that's it. And they got the lions too now. So,
but everybody knows, Mike, that when you role play, there is nothing that you role play better than the toad. And that is your specialty. Hey, Tim, I'm showing a lot of pics up here, and some of these you sent me. Talk to me what we're looking at here. So, dagger plates now
Yeah.
we take up a dagger. God preserve us all. From left to right, the first fighter stabs from above. The second fighter sets aside the stab and turns the dagger away from himself, trapping his opponent's dagger, twisting it out of his hands. And the third fighter stabs above. The fourth fighter thrusts from below to set aside and counter it. And boy, big cod pieces too. All right, so Tim, what's the meaning behind this? Why do we have this image?
Well, the reason is in there's a number of historical masters of defense. There's a lot of them, and whenever they, they'll show guys with swords. Here we have two men fighting with swords, spears, whatever they're fighting with. The only time they say "God help them," or the exact quote there, they say something like "God help them," or it's only when they are using knives, because knives are fast and dangerous. It goes back to the very first thing I ever said to Jay when I first met him when I was 13 or 12 or whatever, where I said, "Don't you think daggers their speed factor is so fast that we should get 2 attacks around?"
Yeah, and
so-
what did he say to that?
I think he was just like, "Hi, my name's Jay." I don't know. I don't remember.
No,
But,
I like that. Hey, Bill, good to see you. No, I like that actually. That's a really good idea. And I've read a lot of the same sorts of thing. People that have been in real fights with real blades and weapons or have researched this stuff. There is almost nothing more dangerous than a man who's really good with a knife.
I've practiced, with daggers and knives, and I've sparred with it. I've sparred with wooden trainers. So you want to suit up a little bit more than just wearing a t-shirt for those. And even though I think I'm decent, I don't want to go fight anybody with a knife. I'll tell you that, because it's super dangerous. Super dangerous. You're going to get. Chances are pretty good that you're going to get cut. And
You're
so,
gonna get cut.
You're
Yep.
You're going to get cut. And one of the thing about those pictures too is that they're using primarily thrusting. You can see the way those daggers are shaped. They're made to stab. They're not really made to cut as much as stab, and that's because of the heavy materials and you're going through layers of cloth. Slicing is not going to be nearly as effective as that stab. That stab is what gets you.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I like that. That's a great subject, and I think that is something that could be tweaked a bit in terms of how you play your game to give a better advantage in certain situations to someone who's got
I
that
have
speed.
never dented a fencing face mask more than I did with a dagger.
Interesting.
We're sparring with wooden long swords, like real long swords. It's shaped, not 40 inches, like 4 foot long. I've never dented a mask as much as I have with a dagger, where I stab him in the face. You haven't lived till you stabbed your chaplain in the face with a wooden dagger. It was one of my training partners. So it's like,
I love that. That may be the
closeness.
quote.
I like to get. It's the closeness. I really.
That's the quote of the day.
But it dented in, and he actually had a little grill on his forehead. A little mark where the mask had contacted his forehead.
Hey, Mike, go ahead. So you got your hand up?
Yeah, I have examples of armor and
You didn't see my jaw drop? I'm looking at them right now. These are absolutely, and also Manda, Mystical Unicorn, put in a really cool
Yes,
mini that she
I
did.
saw
So
that, yeah.
I'm going to pull these
Beautiful.
up in just a second. You guys, these are, wow, incredible. But first, I want to come back. I want to show a video that Tim found before we move too far away from the subject of armor and realism and weight. This is someone trying to perform athletic feats in full plate. And so let me cue this video up for you, and for the viewing pleasure of all you Gary Connors, here is what it's like in full plate.
It's about 50 pounds. Now, not quite the image of the stumbling fool attired in full armor who could hardly move, let alone get into the saddle of his horse, and where's my pulley or crane? Not quite, and it's obvious.
Poleaxe, which is not possible for a sword to cut through armor. It simply cannot happen.
That's pretty impressive movement.
That is.
That's pretty impressive movement. I couldn't do that without armor. So, leather armor, doesn't matter.
Yeah, it really is impressive. So a lot of sort of common tropes being, pushed through here, like
to be truly
that they wouldn't be able to get up in full armor.
The freedom of movement to match the swiftness of a lesser armored opponent on the battlefield.
Yeah, it sounds like a bunch of BS. Because that guy's hauling butt. Look at him.
And also let a knight climb or mount a steed quickly. But the design cannot compromise on its protective capabilities. And it has to be able to withstand what is perhaps the pinnacle of medieval metallurgy.
And this should get you ready for the joust tonight. Shorewind will be in the joust. Maybe we can get Terry to do jumping jacks.
I can see Tim's mind going right now. He's gonna go home, put on his suit of armor, and try all of these things. Set up the camera first, though, Tim.
All right.
I don't have all that.
I'm going to turn the music or the sound down on and just let that video play while we're talking. So, Evelyn, anything jumps out to you in all this?
I mean, it's
I served up a great example. What jumps out to you is that they're jumping, in full plate armor. These guys are doing pretty incredible movements. So, I think this does allow us to have fun with fully armored characters in D&D and stay pretty close to realism. Mm-hmm. Okay, you guys want to see the minis. All right, here we go. I'm going to pull up my Discord here and share this with everybody. And I'll click each of these images to make them bigger. So let's go up first of all. Mystical Unicorn Manda. This is a dragon that she painted. Look at that eye. That is incredible. And then here is the back and the wings.
Now that is a great example of battered armor right there.
Yeah. So
looks like she even put a little patina on it too.
Yeah. So and as for a technical view, Mike, you do this stuff all the time. You see the patina. What else do you see about the style that was used here?
Well, she made it look battered. She did exactly what I was talking about. It looks like she used her brush, and instead of, using natural strokes, it looks like she actually just, used a pointillism kind of and just dabbed it on. And it looks really, really good. She put her weathering and her shadows around her bolts where she needed to. It's just perfectly done. And the leather straps look like they are worn and definitely about ready to peel right off of that armor. She did an incredible job. That's the way the armor, especially on something old that looks like an undead dragon, right? Or just a really old ancient dragon. So that armor would look like that. It looked like that armor was once silver, but now no longer. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's well said. So, Amanda, if you want to pop anything in the chat about how you did that, anything else that you want to add, go ahead. And let's take a look at a couple of Mike's examples of armor. Wow, look at that.
So that's like a decorative piece now. Mm-hmm. So that's why it's like in a jade color, So that would be, I know it's a bad picture, so.
Oh yeah, I wish all my bad pictures of my minis look like that.
Also a decorative piece because he's an angel. Hence all the freehand on top of the helm in the faceplate having no eyes. It's a fantasy piece. So, that's
I'm throwing out all my paint.
You don't know how many times I've said that to Mike. I don't think he likes it when I say this because he wants to encourage people. He wants to be a source of inspiration. But every time I talk to Mike, I feel like just getting rid of everything I have with paints and art. It's wow. Now, tell me that is not just, honestly, I'd want to hug him. He looks so cute. That dwarf, that's amazing.
It's Hammer time.
Yeah, that's just a regular example of what I was talking about before, like something, and that's battered armor right there. That's just your regular going in. Now I know there's gold trim, but it's bronze down. I aged it a lot, you know.
Right.
So, and then on this guy, this is really where you weather it up. Don't pay attention to the color of the armor. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just look at the weathering. Look at where it's aged and it's been beat. You can see where this guy has rubbed it up against surfaces. And if you pay attention to the horn, the metal on the horn, that is exactly. If you could zoom in on it, I don't know if you could.
Yeah, hang on, I
but
can.
you can see how I battered up that horn, and I used several different golds to do it. And I started off with a brown base coat to do that. So it made it even more aged looking. So
There you go. Now it's zoomed in a little bit more.
yeah. If you go to the horn on top of his head,
Yeah.
you see how it's got just like what Mystical Unicorn did. That was the same thing that I did there.
Yeah.
So it's just that you could really see it on hers. So I just wanted to show the example. I'm glad that she put that in. But you can also see it on the blade. If you focus on the blade of his thing, you can see how I weathered up his blade. If you go up a little bit more.
That's all I've got there on the image. That's as far up as it goes,
yeah. See how?
you can see it.
Well, the rest of it. That's how I rusted up his blade, and I did the same thing. I only put the shiny areas of the metal where it would rub, where he would hit it in battle, or where he would lay it down or something while he was at rest. You know that only those areas are going to get rubbed, and only that nice metal is going to shine through, and the rest of it's going to look like doo doo. So because he uses it. This guy's a warrior of plague, so I made it look as dirty as I possibly could. You have to take when you're painting your armor, just like what Mystical Unicorn did with that zombie dragon. You have to take into fact the story, the lore behind the character that you're painting this armor on, and then you go from there. So I look at how the sculptor did it. Like if it was a zombie, I'm going to make that armor look as old can be. And it's going to be very, very little shiny stuff on it.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that, Mike, and just incredible artwork. Thank you also, Amanda. So Tim, I know we have just a few minutes left with you. Tim has a stream that will be running in just over an hour. And he's going to have it could be a very short stream. I think a TPK may be in order in the first 30 minutes based on everything Tim has told us.
Don't try to do that, John.
It just happens.
You've killed way more than I have.
Oh, okay. Now don't throw shade like that, Tim. You know that's not true.
I mean, we've already started a support group for all the players that John's killed, so you know.
Okay, so
Look, I don't do it. I just enable others.
Exactly.
I'm an enabler.
So Tim, you got a few other pictures that you sent here. I'm happy to bring any of them up, but this one I thought was pretty cool. What did you want to talk about here, other than the fact that you like seeing arrows through craniums?
That is from it's from a finding in the Battle of Visby, which was in Gotland. The battle is significant in that there were several mass graves, but due to the time frame of it, the mostly peasants, mostly citizens were out facing knights and professional soldiers, or at least full-time soldiers, and so they did lose. And the king who defeated him offered him a chance to keep their charter as a kind of free city, and it took they had to fill a giant barrel with silver for him to do that. So they did so. Probably took a couple days. It was in July, late July. They probably didn't get a chance to bury the dead very recently, so they're quickly buried, which means they didn't strip them all of armor. So there's actually armor from mid 1300s, and it's peasant armor. And so they had some coat of plates. What we know about early armor and coat of plates is from this find, which was found in 1905, I think.
Wow.
If I recall correctly. I mean, I have.
Uh-oh. And yes, don't talk about the players I've killed, just the PCs.
So this book it's a reprint of a 2-volume that was originally published in 1939.
Can you hold that up again so I can see the title more clearly? Everybody that wants to see it. Armor from the Battle of Wisby, 1361. So anybody that wants to check that out, some light morning reading there.
Yeah. Just something you keep by the toilet, you know.
Right, Mike? But what like, go ahead, Tim.
Well, so they could look at these 1,200 bodies that were in these mass graves and see the kind of injuries that happened to them. And so arrow injuries, most of the arrow injuries, all but one, were in the head. A lot of times the top of the head. So the archers are firing at range. Not a lot of people were obviously wearing helmets. I think the style of the time in Scandinavia was mostly a male coif.
Right.
And male's great for a lot of things, but when they're using bodkin heads, like narrow heads, it pushes through. So there's a lot of, number of injuries in the head. That picture was an arrowhead lodged in the cranium. There is one arrow. They found one leg bone with the arrowhead still in it, and it was right at the bottom of the femur, like lodged in the bone. I think there's a picture there. It might be the tibia, but it's.
Oh, I have that one. Yeah, I'll pull that one up. And by the way, where else on D&D streaming and Twitch this morning are you going to see actual skeletal legs that have been severed by a blade?
And now this one, this picture right here is a double amputee from apparently the same swing.
Oh.
Huh.
So when you don't have leg armor, a lot of the injuries are going to be in the legs, because I'm not going to try to cut through your plate. If people are in armor, all the techniques in the historical masters, you're fighting around the armor. And so there's techniques where you're not swinging. You're not going to just swing at them. You're actually going to choke up and grab the blade with two hands, the handle and the blade, and you're going to, while you parry them, try to stab them in the face. You're going to try to go around in the armpits, groin. You're going to try to throw them on the ground where you can, do what you want. So armor works, and that's why people used it. And if you don't cover parts, those are the parts that people try to hit.
Yeah.
There's a lot of bodies with no markings on the skeleton because they were probably soft tissue injuries,
No, that makes sense. I think this is the picture you're referring to with the arrowhead stuck in the tibia. And I want to mention a couple of things in the chat. One, I love this. Derek Extort said that book is what you use in the morning to pick out your outfit for the night on the town, Tim. And then we had down here below, so a question from Gimbal. So an archer within 50 feet would be uncommon, is a question.
Well, I mean, archers are going to shoot where they got to.
Yeah.
But,
Right.
But I mean, if you're closing, just like modern times, you want to hit them with artillery first. You want to rattle them. You want to cause incidental injuries. You want to cause, you want to cause those damages. So even if you're functional, even if you're not dead, you still get an arrow in you.
Right.
That's going to ruin your day probably, and it's not going to be fun. And you're going to attrit them. You're going to start causing damage, and so you're more effective when you close with them. So I'd say mass archers are going to try to fire. They don't want to get close.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Evelyn, Mike, anything you want to say on the subject?
No, I was just saying, an archer. The closer someone with a blade gets to an archer, the worse their day is going to be, because, you're holding a bow, you're kind of not able to defend yourself. So, you're going to be as far away from the people with the pointy things as possible.
The closer you get, one of them's going to have a really bad day.
Yeah.
Because there's risks to get close, too.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Weren't some of those longbows used, they could actually, they were so big and sturdy, though, you could be used in melee once somebody got up close to you as a staff. And I know that a blade will cut right through it, but it's still a defensive.
If you the longbows, because there was a sunken ship that was sank in the late 1500s, and on it had an armory, so it had tons of longbows, English longbows, and so they could kind of see the thickness of them. So some of the longbows could be up to 100, more than 120-pound pull. So
Exactly.
technically you're right. However, you're going to break you. Once it gets hit, because when they make the longbow, they actually make a stave, and then they strip away the wood so that front layer is from the same ring of the tree.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
And if you break that, when you bend that bow, that's where it's going to fail. If your life depended on it, I'd use that bow to hit something.
Yeah, one use though, I guarantee it.
But you're not going to be able to shoot with it probably if it gets nicked up.
No, probably not. But still, if you're not going to be able to shoot with it if he's in there on you anyway.
That's right.
So you know what I mean. You better use it for something. And I don't know if it's because I see in some artwork. I never seen any historical photos, but sometimes they have like metal spikes at the tops of their bows. You know what I mean? Was that a real thing that they had?
Almost like a rifle bayonet, right?
Well, I know they have things in the end to hold the string on. So there's usually, I think often it was made of horn, but they might have had metal ones too. Just to keep the strings from slipping off.
Right. And I think some of those like had spikes on them. I'm not sure, but I've never seen like a picture of it, but I've seen a lot of artists do it. And I wonder where they got, because honestly, artwork, you need inspiration to create it. So where do these, getting these ideas from? I'd like to know if that was a real thing actually, because that would also turn that thing into a spear, a longbow.
Yeah.
If you could jab it at somebody, they come in too close to you.
No, and I think this is a great topic because this does, if you bring it right back to the actual, playing D&D, there's a lot of fun things that you can do with this subject that could both add a little bit of realism, but also flair and fun to the game. There's a couple things in chat I wanted to ask about. One, Patrick said, archers captured often had their index and middle fingers cut off as punishment. I thought that was interesting. And then,
if they were lucky enough to not be killed.
Yeah, but that's your secondary option, right? And then Gimbal asked, do you have disadvantages for bows if they're too close? And do you think D&D has the correct minimum range for bows? So I do think this is what most DMs will do this. If you get too close, they're either going to restrict the use of the bow. At the minimum, you're going to provoke an attack of opportunity every time you try to use it, similar to spell casting when you've got somebody with a blade that's point blank with you. You could, if I think maybe in that last foot or two, you might, like to Tim's point, somebody's going to have a bad day, right? So if you've already got the arrow knocked and that guy's right there and you let it go from 2 feet away as he's getting close, that might be, a great shot for you. But then after that, you're toast.
I have a 40 pound because I'm modern. I didn't go like for the more historical, like heavier, but 40-pound recurve modeled after a horseman's bow. And if you want to come within 10 feet, I'm pretty sure I can still hit you. I'm pretty sure. And now I was reading on Saracen archery, they would shoot at a target like 40 yards away, and they would have 3 arrows in the air before the first one hit. Mm-hmm. That was their measure. And so run up on that if you want. I mean, so you have 3 or 4 people shooting 3 arrows, obviously they were very skilled, but that's, obviously in melee, you're not going to be able to really get a good shot, but up close, easier to hit you.
Yeah.
And they're going to know how to read their arrow with the archers, the archer's paradox. The archer's paradox, where you got your bow here, and the string is in line with the bow, and the arrow is on the side. So when that string is accelerating the back of the arrow, it's accelerating it towards the center line of the bow. So the arrow flexes, and then as it straightens out, the trajectory is altered. It's not like shooting straight a rifle. That's the archer's paradox, and that's why a lot of modern bows cheat and do a cutout to avoid the archer's paradox, like a bunch of wimps.
Compensate for your arrows. Come on.
Anyway, and they probably have pulleys on their stupid bows too. But they would know how to do that. They would know how to compensate for that. So they should be able to shoot. I guess what's the minimum 10 feet and is the normal. And then if you're specialized, it's 5 feet.
Yeah, because
first edition?
there are feats in at least 3.5 that allow for shooting in melee range without the decrement to the attacks, but you can't get that right off the bat.
I would let an archer with an arrow knocked at the ready. I'd let him shoot in combat range once.
Yeah, that's my
Go
thought
ahead,
as well.
try to put another arrow on the string while the guy is swinging at you.
Yeah, I think that's typically how I've played it, and I think that makes the most sense. It's lightweight as a rule. It's not hard to implement, but I do think I like the idea, and I have not historically done this, but I probably will in the future. Whether it's one of my players that's running up on that orc that's got a bow, or whether it's the orc running up on one of my PCs that's got the bow. When they get to that last sort of 10, 15 feet, I think there's going to be an enhancement to the attack bonus and definitely an enhancement to the damage because you got that punching through at short range, probably more accurate.
Unless he's rattled, because I mean, having somebody armored running up, you might not be you might not be your best.
His hands are shaking and he's freaking out. So Tim, I know you have to go. Yeah, he's influencing me again. That's so true. Yeah, Tim is a bad influence on me. Everybody knows that. That's why I counterbalance him with Evelyn, and then Mike sits right in the middle and keeps us all squared away and straight.
I'm just walking all this way for my ranger. Things I need to know.
There you go.
Hey, so Tea Time with Taryn, that's from your channel, right, Mike? And asking about all of our guests. So Tim has to leave here, but I'm going to let him do one last sort of announcement and shout out of his stream coming up in an hour. And then we'll go ahead and have Evelyn and Mike introduce themselves again for those that have joined late. But Mike, Tim, before you go, could you tell everybody about that 1,250-pound draw crossbow thing you were telling me about?
There's a guy, he has got a YouTube channel, Todd's Workshop, I think. He's Todd Cutler. He makes period weapons. He makes period crossbows. And I first ran across him when I was researching I was going to make a steel crossbow myself. I still may do that when I have free time. But he has he demonstrates a 1,250-pound pole crossbow. So it's a steel bow. You have to put a winch. He winches it up. And you'd think this thing would just like punch through, unlimited things. But the physical limitations of this 1,250-pound crossbow, which is frightening to hear it fire and just imagine, it has recoil, is that there's a limited power stroke, which is the length of the draw. So the longer your power stroke, the faster velocities you can generate for your projectiles. So that's why you have these high-powered bows now with super light arrows, because they have a super long power stroke. They can get these light arrows super fast. And that's why, bolts were short and heavy, because the velocity limitations were such you could only get them so fast. But you could push something heavy. So you're limiting the top velocity, but you're also pushing a lot. So that's why the bolts ended up being thicker and heavier and stiffer, and the range is comparable to a longbow, but they're just shorter projectiles.
Yeah, no, and so 1,250-pound pull. Patrick wants to know if that was handheld. Yes.
Now you can see he has this. Basically, it's the winch system attaches to the stock. It's like a box it's got handles on it. He sets it on the ground. He attaches it to the string. He winches it up, and once it's locked in, he removes the winch system, restretches it out, lays it down, picks it up, puts a bolt in it, and then prepares to fire. And then you have to do the whole thing over again. So 3 rounds, one shot every 3 rounds is fairly realistic for a heavy crossbow.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, good stuff. But Tim, you got to tell us about what you got coming up in 53 minutes now. This is your commercial for your upcoming stream.
7 players, 7 barbarians, 4 hours, Dark Hand Headhunt.
Ooh. And Derek was sad you weren't talking about Warhammers, but it sounds like there may be some Warhammers coming up at
No
8 o'clock.
survivors. I was gonna say, I swear, Bill. I was gonna say the same thing. No survivors.
Hey, thank you very much to the ever mysterious Tim. We're going to continue on here with Evelyn and Mike and I. We may be joined by Vivi soon, and we'll go a little bit longer today. And you're going to want to be tuned in to this channel, same channel here, Gary Con Greyhawk, at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern, with Tim and 7 barbarians, no survivors. Thank you very much, Tim.
TPK.
All right, and clicking back over to my other view, there we go. And let me fix your angle just a bit there, Mike. That's my thing, not yours. Don't sweat that. Yeah, like, Mike, I don't know, have you talked to Tim very often, one-on-one?
No, not much. Nope.
Yeah, he is always wired for that topic. I mean, you can see he's like, just you wind him up talking about weapons and armor, and he will go. That is his thing.
Oh, I'm very familiar with him. I just haven't had too much one-on-one with him.
Yeah,
I know all about him.
he's fantastic. All right, so I liked a question that popped up earlier, which I thought we could address, which was balancing. Magic. One of the viewers said, well, hey, if you put too much focus on realism for armor and weaponry, then you can really make it punitive for martial classes. How do you balance that out with magic? So I want to revisit something that we stated multiple times at the beginning of the stream, but in case you joined us later, none of what we're talking about today is meant to suggest that you as a PC or a DM need to over encumber your game with so much realism and so much statistic information and situational variances that it's just not fun anymore. No, most of us are not playing war game simulations when we're playing D&D. So none of these topics, the pull of the bow, the archer's paradox, the size of the stairwells and what direction they're going. Pick and choose what you like, what you don't like. You could take one or two things and just bring more realism to your game without bogging it down. And so please, this is not a take it all or leave it all. Consider it like a buffet of things you can just pick and choose what you like to put into your game. So any other questions in the chat before we talk about magic that I missed, Evelyn?
Let me look back. Because I thought I saw one other one, but I can't remember.
While we're waiting, please go ahead and click that link. Give us a follow over on the Blue Box channel if you're not a follower. We do stream 3 times every week. Sometimes we stream 4 times a week. So I'll pull up, this is our regular schedule. So we stream a Rune Lords campaign. It's a Pathfinder in Golarion stream every Sunday at 1:30 Central. Then Greyhawk Awakening. That crew, that cast, that game is the one that we streamed, days are blurring together, Thursday. And we'll be streaming again tomorrow. You'll see the conclusion of the Slaver's Return to the Pomage of our Greyhawk Awakening campaign on Sunday. But that normally plays on Tuesdays. Then Wednesday, we have a Loremaster's Arcanum, which is this style. It's a chat show. We dive into all kinds of topics about D&D, and it's pretty wide-ranging. And all these things also get posted to our YouTube, and you can see the day that those get posted up to our YouTube on the schedule as well. And then once a month, we have a Saturday campaign that we run, and we're going to be launching a Castles and Crusades campaign on that Saturday in response to our new sponsorship with Troll Lord Games. And also a little something extra that we've added. I don't know if Robert Phantom is still in the chat. I saw him earlier.
He stepped away. He said he'd be back for the last half hour.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll mention this again, but we got something really fun that's coming. If you're in our Discord, and we can pop the creds for that again. Yep. If you're in our Discord, pretty much every Friday night, there's going to be a real low-key kind of one-shot style game run in our Discord by Robert, by Phantom. It's not going to be streamed. It's not going to be a continuing campaign. It'll rotate players. So it's kind of, you'll have anybody that just wants to jump on a Friday night and you don't have anything else to do and you want to just play a little bit of D&D, you'll be able to hook up with people for that game in our Discord, and there'll be a channel directly for that. So come onto our Discord, and we'll be starting that, should be next week, if not next week, the week after, Friday night D&D in Discord on Blue Box.
See, that's awesome. That's badass right there. Friday night D&D, you looking for something to do, you don't have to go out to the pub or, spend any money, and sit right here and get your game on with your friends and roll some dice.
That's exactly it. And I like the fact that that's not going to be streamed, because some people don't want to be on stream, or they don't want the pressure or the preparation of it. If you just want to jump in and play a little D&D and you're having trouble finding people to hook up with, we're going to have that all run through our Discord, and there'll be a DM there just about every Friday night to play games with you. And any of you that want a DM, talk to me first, because I want to make sure the content is consistent with our brand. I don't want anything that's going to get us in trouble. So keep everything sort of Blue Box consistent in terms of stylistically. But we definitely want multiple DMs and players to be able to participate and have a good time. All right. Let's see here. What is in the chat? Oh yeah, that's true. Actually, the Dino shirt, it's upstairs. Maybe I'll grab it in a minute. Don't
you dare take that overboard shirt off.
It's beautiful.
Don't you dare.
Yeah, you're right,
What are you talking about? That's
You can't while Mike is on stream. Come on.
That's true. That's true. Well, I won't put it on. It mocks me every time I walk past it. It is the most obnoxious looking shirt you have ever seen. And it is something being inflicted upon me by the Mad Chatters, because I don't like dinosaurs in my D&D. Dragons are as close as I get. And so they, you like them? That's fine. I know they're canon. I know they're in the modules. I know you don't have to tell me all that. But they like to tease me about it. And so we have hit more than 100 several times on Blue Box live viewers, but usually it's been part of cons. We did it with our charity streams. We've been in the 90s a couple of times lately, but when we get 100 on a regular Sunday or Tuesday, I have to wear that Dino shirt for a full week on stream every time.
We're going to make that happen, that's for sure. We're working on it. I see the numbers go, and they get gradually, both you and Jay have your numbers gradually rising every week, because the community they're becoming more aware of the great content that you guys provide. So and you have good guests, on your Arcanums. You have good games. I mean, look at your schedule. You're on 4 nights a week. People can't get enough of it still, and it keeps growing. So
oh, thank you, Mike.
It's gonna be before long. We're gonna see you in that Dino shirt, loving life.
Oh yeah, and then last thing we'll mention on that, if you're in that Discord and you're anywhere around this area, there is apparently going to be an actual Blue Box Con in May, which please keep your expectations low. We're putting this together in 6 weeks. We've never done this before. It's really a get together to mourn my 50th birthday.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Celebrate!
So
no, I think he's right. I'm coming up on mine too. So
yeah, your condolences will be accepted. All right, so let's jump back into talking some D&D. And man, so cool. 100 people listening to us talk about chopping body parts off realistically for D&D. That is awesome. Everything else in the chat I missed, Evelyn?
Thing, Dad, for D&D.
Yes.
For D&D.
For D&D, yes, for D&D. I don't want the Twitch gods to come down on me. Yeah, this is all fantasy D&D stuff. Okay. Yes, we are old, Jay. We are old. Pot, kettle, all that, right? Then...
Not as old as Jay. Jay's way old.
I know. No, I will not wear a dinosaur onesie. That's not going to happen, Derek. No matter what, I won't do it. All right, so let's talk about magic and realism of magic in your D&D games. Because you don't want to be overly punitive to your martial characters, and you want to have that balance. We've talked about this a little bit before. What are your thoughts, Evelyn?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of punitive things about magic too. You can hit your entire party with a fireball if it's not well placed and the space is small. So, I mean, there's, the magic, like martial weapons in D&D, has its various restrictions. I mean, and if you don't have the spell components, you can't cast a thing. Whereas if you have a sword, you can hit something with it. So, it's that trade-off. It's the give and take of what the classes have. I think in all, balance is relative, but not necessarily. I don't know that perfect balance is the ideal thing either, but I feel like both have their pros and cons as far as what they have available to them and what they can do.
Yeah, I had a couple thoughts on that, but Mike, let me let you go first. Anything you wanted to say on the topic?
Well, magic is magic. You know what I mean? And like she said, there's your caveat right there. When you're mixing realism and magic together, well, there's the fireball, for instance. It's magical. Nobody can do anything like a fireball. But when it explodes, the realism is that it's going to burn everything in that circumference. And so there you go with your mixture of your magic and your realism and your immersion. I mean, magic happens in D&D. That's where it's not real, right. And we just have to get past that line and get our minds in the right set and think of it like that, but everything else you need to make real. The magic is the magic part. Everything else is real. If you hit something, it's gonna hurt and they're gonna react. If you cast a spell, it's magical. It's gonna do what it's supposed to do. There's no other way to explain it, really. It's mixture realism with your magic. Like I said, she did perfect example of the fireball.
Yeah.
If it's gonna blow up, it's gonna blow up, and fireball doesn't know friend or foe. Fireball knows I burn everything. That's what fireball knows. So
yeah, no, that's so true. And I want to because there are some other common sense draws on magic that you can use in your game, which still keep things, I think, quite well balanced, and they make it more fun to play in magic using class. The originators of D&D and Gary and Dave, they fully understood how potent spellcasting could be and how it could unbalance the game. This is why you had things like component restrictions and why you had the original wizard 4 hit points. D4 rather, it's a D4 for your hit points. These guys are walking weaklings for the first few levels because it's somewhat of a counterbalance to the fact that as they get up in levels, they can become very, very potent. Now, Mike, while we're talking about that, I'm wondering if you can search through your vast library. Do you have any minis that you've painted with cool spell effects? Maybe a fireball coming out of a hand or something that we could talk about painting magic. If you can't, don't sweat it. I'm just putting you on the spot again. So Evelyn, what are some other things, I mentioned a couple, what are some other things you think of when you think of spellcasters that should be considered to make sure the game feels balanced, but also puts that just a little bit of technical thing in the game for the spellcaster?
Other than material components, I mean, having certain, ranges for certain magic abilities makes sense. Having certain things require attack rolls, like of various rays or, things like that. Limiting the damage of the spells to keep things a little balanced. Like Magic Missile has a limit to each missile that's fired because of what the spell is, and just various things that help kind of keep it more magical effects from being so much more powerful than your the non-magical attacks.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. And you mentioned. So how about this? So we talked about bows and proximity with bows. I think as DMs, too often I see it missed that when somebody is casting a spell and somebody else is within, arm's reach with a sword, the vulnerability there, the ability to disrupt the spell, to create an attack of opportunity, and then concentration checks when you take damage. I think that's something you don't want to miss that in your game. If that wizard, let's say that he had, 30 hit points, and he just took a shot to the side from a longsword and took 15 hit points of damage, he's just not naturally going to be able to always keep that concentration and cast that spell on his next attack. So, using damage to disrupt spell casting, proximity of weaponry to create attacks of opportunity. These are not overly technical things. These are just common sense things that I think can really make the game more fun, but also more challenging for the Magic user.
Mm-hmm. And it encourages your Magic users that are very squishy to stay further away from the people with the long pointy things.
That's exactly right. Keep the squishy people away from the long pointy things. That is D&D in a nutshell. And you do like that. You like to see the role play of a character that knows he is not going to do well in direct, hand-to-hand mortal combat, and then all the things that can happen when he's tried to stay to the back of the party, but something comes up from behind them, or they get split, and there's all kinds of tactical things that can be fun to do there in your game. Mike, have you come up with any?
I found one. You kind of did put me on the spot there, because I have so many pictures, it's really hard to look through them all like that. So I have one that I put in there of a treant, and she's got like a magical...
Oh, yeah, look at that.
She's got her magic within herself, so it's underneath the bark. You can see the green
hang on. I closed it. There we go. Pull it back up.
Out of her eyes.
All right, let me open
And I'm trying to find more. I have a really good one, and I can't find it, of course.
No, take your time. No rush. But yeah, look at that. I like the effect with her. Sort of the glowing eyes. That is slick.
Okay, I did find another one here.
And it was mentioned, I think it was Derek, somebody, saying, hey, it would be good to see, is that why there are not many Magic users in my game? No, I want Magic users in my game. They can be...
Our Sunday party is 3/4 Magic users.
That's right.
Literally, Cade's the only one who isn't not a Magic user in that party.
Yeah, that's true. Now, he may be speaking more specifically of the arcane, sort of strictly wizard type, whereas, we've got a lot of divine spellcasters, people that take advantage, paladins or scalds or things like that. But no, we definitely do. And
Cade is a rum user.
Yeah, that's Cade. Cade is the rum user. So...
There, I just put in some fire. You want a fireball? Cool. I just put in a fireball from an Oni Magic user. That's an Ogre Magi. Awesome. That's an Ogre Magi right there with the fireball.
Okay, hang on. I'll pull him up. And oh golly, look at that. Holy smokes.
And then of course Mystical Unicorn put in another one as well. She did 2 spells with she's got some good OSL going on there too. I'm sorry, I don't know if Mystical Unicorn is a female or a male.
It's Manda.
It's Manda.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, that's Manda. And Manda, she's not only a regular contributor, she's a great part of our show. And she also painted this guy and sent him to me. This frost giant was done by Manda Mystical Unicorn. She actually had this in a competition. And look at the snow on his shoulders. Yeah, very, very talented artist. But yeah, the fire, I'll bring up her other print here in a second, but the fire, talk about creating those effects. Obviously, you can sort of see the colors that you're using to pull in and the variation, but what are you thinking in terms of the effect and how you create it? And then what technically are you doing to make that happen?
Well, fire is heated on the inside. The center of the fire is the hottest, of course, so you want to make that white. So what I start off with is I'll paint all the white parts. So to start off the fire, I'll paint everything, the flame, everything, the core, all white. Then I will go in and start hitting it with a yellow glaze, which is a really thin down yellow. You know what I mean? It's just a really thin down paint. And I'll just go in and hit the raised areas, not all of the raised areas. I won't let it go in to the recesses. Just like with the armor, I will always let the black show. Well, with this, I'll let the white show in the recesses, because I want that white hotness to be there, you know. And then after the yellow, I go to an orange, then from an orange to a red, from a red to a, you know, usually a darker, like a more up to a brownish black, and then finally I'll put a black spot right on top of the flames.
That is yeah, look at that. That is crazy. If you have any other questions about this sort of stuff, technique for Mike Disney, let us know. I'm looking at their faces right now. The detail in those faces, that is insane. So it's funny that someone said Ogre Magi are, Derek said they're cool and underused. I don't know if you watched our show Thursday, but the party is attacking a fort that has orcs and ogres primarily, and they saw a robed figure, a huge robed figure that at the very end of the session rose up in flight above the fort. I was using this mini here, and you know, I'm not saying, but I'm just saying, may not be as underused as you think. No worries, my friend. So let me pull up Manda's other real quick here. Oh, this guy here.
Yeah.
Look at that. Yeah, very cool.
Very cool.
So yeah, you see you've got the fire effect and I guess the ice effect. I like the way she shaded across, so it's sort of the two halves of the spellcaster. You got the illumination effect from each.
The light effect is really cool.
Yeah, that really is. That's a neat effect, Amanda. Well done. Well done. Yeah, so, you know, the comment was made that you know, you'd like to see Mike's minis shown in more games. Well, you will.
Yep.
That's part of what Mike is doing with both Jay and I, is his minis are going to be appearing in our games. Not only are his minis going to be appearing in our games, you're going to have giveaway opportunities for them on our streams as well. So you're going to see maybe NPCs that recur, your monsters from Mike Disney, and we will occasionally have giveaways from Mike Disney. And if you don't mind, could you pop his creds in the channel again there?
Yeah, of course.
If you're watching right now and you haven't followed Mike Disney's channel, man, what are you doing? You got to get over there. He is absolutely fantastic. And Amanda, thank you so much for joining us. If you'd like to pop any of your creds in the chat as well so people can find you, please feel free to do that. We want to support the community, and we want to support the people that are adding so much to what we're doing. We appreciate all of that. All right, so with the few minutes that we have remaining, yes, please. With the few minutes that are remaining, any other topics that you would like to dive into, Evelyn, from your background with props, with theater, you know, the weaponry, clothing, or even how you prepare those sorts of things when theater is actually a happening thing?
Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about that. So regardless of how weapons are being used on stage, I primarily am responsible for maintaining those and making sure all edges are blunted, because we don't want to give sharp things to actors. They could actually do damage to each other, and even with blunted weapons they can still do damage to each other, but you definitely don't want them sharp. We have, I usually work with a combat choreographer whose entire job is just to stage all of those fights and work the actors through how to go about doing that safely. And then I tell the actors how, usually work with the combat choreographer on making sure that I work with them to know how to draw their weapons from their scabbards, because they usually have to wear a scabbard belt, or in the case of a rapier, a frog is what that is called, that the rapier goes in, and the various equipment, because I also provide all of those belts and parts, because there's lots of pieces and parts when it comes to wearing weapons in general, but so I work with them on proper handling of those things, and storage, because they have to be returned. They are not toys, they are still weapons, even if they are blunted. And then in between shows, it's my job to actually keep those weapons maintained, keep your swords oiled and clean, because you don't want them rusting. They will rust over time, so you have to maintain that, and keep them stored away safely. But yeah, so I've worked with lots of various weapons on stage, from Shakespeare plays to various musicals. I've had to blunt lots of straight razors for Sweeney Todd, for example. Just the various things like that. Having and doing tons of research, understanding based on the period of the show what kinds of weapons they would actually have, what kinds of things that they would be handling, how they would be handling it, and just making sure the look feels right. And yeah, I think that kind of covers the overarching topic of stage combat. There's a lot more to it, but that would be a whole thing to itself. So
no, that's fantastic. And not only was that interesting, but I learned something again. I did not know the scabbard for a rapier was called a frog. So that's very cool. With all of that, that would lead one to think, like, have you ever gotten into LARPing, or it feels so close to what you're doing with that stage performance combat?
Yeah, I have not done it. I know that there are people that do it, but I prefer to handle the real weaponry, not the foam weaponry. And I don't think there's anything wrong for people that do that. I like handling and creating those things that are based in high realism. It's fun.
Well, yeah, and so
and I want to learn how to blacksmith eventually, so that's on my goal list. I want to actually learn how to make weapons and armor and stuff for myself.
Okay, that would be hard. That would be hardcore. If you become a blacksmith, bravo. That's such a cool goal. But yeah, I've never LARPed either. I really prefer my blades to be on 28 millimeter minis. But I don't.
Me too.
But is it true? Is it so they use foam always, or do sometimes people LARP with actual blunted blades, or?
They have. There's very strict rules as far as, from what I understand from my friends who do live action role play, that requires weapons to be foam because of the risk of injury. You do not want to cause vast injury to your friends while you're live action role playing with because unlike the stage where you have a professional whose job it is to teach you how to do this safely, and it's not just a one-time thing either on stage. Every single show that there is combat in, there is a fight call prior to house opening where every fight that happens during the show is run before the show starts, prior to every single performance. So this isn't one thing that they just rehearse, during the rehearsal period and it's done and they just do it on stage. They literally have to come in and run through every single fight, every single time. So if there's a show day that there's 2 shows in, they have to do that fight call before both shows to make sure that they go through it safely with the combat choreographer present, where the handoffs of the blades are happening with the stage management team or the props master or props crew, so that everything is being consistently handled correctly and safely.
Wow, that's really, really cool. Michael had a question, City Guard, in terms of blacksmithing, like where,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Everybody like the Overgourd shirt? Mike Disney's creation here on Blue Box. And I've already mentioned. Here, let me get a little closer to the camera so you can see the detail on this thing.
It's a great shirt. She did such a great job.
It's got
Short Mom on the Run.
It's got crazy detail in it too. So I don't think you're going to be seeing these as regular giveaways on Blue Box unless I'm the one that goes through and picks all the stuff out of them, because it was a lot of work. But yeah,
I guarantee it was. I guarantee it.
Yeah, she crushed that. And good to have Troll Lord on with us today. Troll Lord Games, makers of Castles and Crusades, longtime old school gamers. If you missed the chat with Stephen and Chuck last night, wow, it was a great conversation. A lot of old school stories about his interaction with Gary Gygax and how the game got started, the influence on TLG through those early years. Just some really, really cool stuff. And of course, they're going to be appearing now on Blue Box. Robert Phantom is in the chat. Robert, you missed it earlier. I mentioned we'll be kicking off on our Discord channel our Friday night one-shots, our Friday night D&D in Discord. It's going to be Troll Lord Games, Castles and Crusades set that we'll be running. It's so easy, adaptable to work with. You don't have to have played it before. You'll feel like a duck to water if you've played any sort of D&D. It's really well crafted, great rule set. Very similar to the sorts of games that you see us play here on Twitch. But it's going to be on the Discord channel, and every Friday night, if you just got nothing else to do and you want to pop in there and play some D&D, it won't be streamed. It'll be low-key, easy, and Robert's going to help run it. It's going to be fun. And then you'll see CNC stuff will be run on Blue Box live streams as well in the coming weeks. All right, so before we wrap up, because I do want to give people plenty of time to go get another cup of coffee, grab a drink of water, and be ready for Tim's stream. Tim's stream is coming up in just 20 minutes now. You're going to want to be right on this channel. You heard it here. His campaign, 7 Barbarians. It's going to be it's a crazy party makeup, and he has committed that there will be no survivors. So you're going to want to check that out. That's going to be a fun stream coming up here at 8 o'clock. Before we close out, I want to kind of switch topics. This is something Mike and I have talked a few times about, just kind of the two of us. But I think it's appropriate with Gary Kahn to talk about the influence of D&D and of Gary Gygax. And Mike, whatever you're willing to talk about, I'd love you to share with us how you got started in D&D, and maybe some of the impact that it's had in your life.
Well, D&D has had a huge impact on my life. I started, it's the weirdest thing. My grandmother started me in my world of Dungeons and Dragons. I had no idea what it was. She, I guess, had heard of it or saw it on the Schwann's truck. Well, back in the day, there used to be a truck called Schwann's, and I think they still have them, but they used to go door-to-door delivery. And they would sell you stuff off of the truck, all kinds of things. Well, they had these little D&D books, and they were 3-ring binders. You could put them in a 3-ring binder, because they had the holes cut out in them. And they didn't have dice. They had, on the back of the bottom of the book, they had chits 1 through 20 you could cut out. And they did that because it were the prison edition books, because you weren't allowed the dice in the prisons. So they got those books, and John's pulling them out right there. There you go. That was it. That was my first foray into D&D, and my grandmother got me that. And I think I was about 6 or 7 years old, and I didn't know what I was looking at, but the artwork was what got me. So, and I loved it, and I tried to read it and understand it, but I kept those books. That's it. That's the ones right there. Those are the ones. But I kept those books forever, and they carried me through, a lot of stuff. I not to get into my personal history, but I was raised by my mother, so I really didn't have a father figure around, and having those books, and it was a great escape from a lot of things for me. So Gary Gygax, if it wasn't for him and D&D, I'd be a much different person, and I don't know if I'd be around here today, because I'd probably be getting into stuff I shouldn't have been getting into, because I didn't live in the best of neighborhoods.
Yeah.
So, he was not only was D&D a babysitter, but it was a mentor. It was a lot of things to me, and I can't I will always respect that game no matter what anybody says about it. You know, even during the high Satan crap during the 80s, you know what I mean? I was still bound and determined. You know, I was not going to let people take away my D&D from me, because it is what I had, and it is what I love. I'm very passionate about it, and I wouldn't be doing any artwork or miniatures or anything, honestly, if it wasn't for Gary Gygax in Dungeons and Dragons. So I can't thank him enough. I wish I could.
Mike, no, thank you so much for sharing that. And I think there's elements of that story that are probably similar for a lot of us that started playing at an early age back in those days. And you said a couple things I wanted to touch on. One, I didn't mention it today, but you know, the reason I have this handy, which includes those chits that you referred to, is we're giving this guy away on Tuesday night. On our Tuesday night Greyhawk stream. All new followers during GaryCon that join us on Tuesday night, you will be eligible to win the original 1979 Basic Edition box set in really good condition. It's got all the books in it. It's got, as I showed you, it's got the chits. It's even got the advertisements. It's got the postcards you can send in.
Where did you get that, John?
And it's got the original Keep on the Borderlands B2 module that came with it. It's all in there. And yeah, we're going to give this away on Tuesday night for anybody that follows us during GaryCon, and we'll pop that in the cred, so you can jump over there if you're not already. And Evelyn, you and I have talked about this a little bit as well. You came to D&D a little bit later in life, but you know what has it meant for you in your life?
I mean, I've made a lot of really good friends from playing D&D for one thing, but it allows a creative outlet that I couldn't get doing anything else. And it not only that, but it's actually brought out a lot of things that you know, I've been thinking more about writing again, and I've been doing a lot more art than I had been in a while, and all the various things that tie into it. There are just so many like creative things you can do as a D&D player or a DM, aside from the actual play of the game. There's just so much to it, and the community is wonderful, and yeah.
No, that's well said. And you know, for me, a lot like Mike, I started very early. I was about 7 and 8 years old. It was in the late 70s. And you know, I got started, didn't know what we were doing. You know, we were kids. I'm sure we butchered every rule. We had the old lead minis. You know, we had just a few of them. You know, I don't remember where we scrounged them up, but somewhere they materialized, and we had a few lead minis. And for me, the impact was, I really believe it was foundational to my communication style. A lot of the leadership style that I developed over time came from DMing and interacting with different people. It exploded interest in a whole new realm for me, which was reading fantasy novels and books, and you know, consuming volume after volume. I think a lot of this developed you know, vocabulary and communication and all the things that, as I got a little bit older, those skills were valuable to me through high school and even into the workforce. I still think today there's a lot that I developed through hours and hours playing, and more hours DMing. I've probably 95% of what I've done has been DMing, but a lot of that came from D&D, and it was very much an escape for me as well. You know, I grew up. You know, my father passed away very young. I was also a single mom, or single kid. You know, mom, only child, and you know, didn't always live in the best places. And literally, the club that I was part of in high school was called the Escapist Society, and that's where we played our D&D. So, if you've watched my stuff, I've told some of those stories before, but just high level. You know, this is a game, but it's a game that builds relationships. It builds communication skills. It opens doors, and I've called it before, it's the game that is ever fresh. You know, I get tired of playing Risk. I get tired of playing, you know, Axis and Allies. You know, I can only do the same game so many times. But just the nature of D&D, it's always a new story. It's always a new arc. It's always something surprising. It's ever fresh. and been doing it now for 40 years and still love it. So I think that is probably the best testament I could give to the game. All right, before we close off, any final comments from our guests or Evelyn? Any questions I've missed?
I don't think there's any that I've seen.
If you have any final questions, chatters, let us know. And I haven't mentioned, but thank you to our GaryCon sponsors, Epic Encounters, Idle Champions of the Forgotten Realms. These guys are behind sponsoring the entire GaryCon, so these are not Blue Box sponsors, but these are sponsoring the whole con. We appreciate them. Thank you to Luke and his team for all they've pulled together. And yeah, I should talk about how I've met all my players. Yeah, I don't know, Greg. I'm going to go upstairs right now. I'm going to see what's for breakfast. It's probably going to be cold cereal. And then I've got to get to work because right back here at 1 o'clock today, we have our Blue Box Open one-shot. And that is going to be a blast. It's all new people that are getting to play on Blue Box live. They haven't played with us before. Is anybody a repeat player? I don't think so. I think they're all
Robert
new.
is. He played in
Robert.
your
That's
one shot
right.
back in the fall at Virtual Greyhawk Con.
That's right, Robert is. But everybody else is new, so Robert came back for some more punishment. And that'll be a 1 o'clock stream today, and it's going to be a little different flavor than the Greyhawk stream you saw on Thursday, and you check that out. I think you'll like it. And again, of course, we have Tim coming up. So with that said, thank you again. We're so excited about Trollord Games, our newest sponsor. And Epic folks, make sure you check them out. Mike Disney, been a sponsor with us now for just a couple of weeks, and he and I have had multiple conversations. Fantastic artist. He's already posted his stuff, but follow his Patreon. Check out he streams most mornings. So especially if you're an early riser, he's usually on by around 6 a.m. Central Time. And just incredible. Like yesterday, it blew me away. He's working on something for us, and he was working with, I guess you call it the green stuff. Is that what you call it?
Green stuff. It's Neat-A-Tight epoxy. It's a 2-part epoxy that you put together that forms green, and plumbers used to use it on pipes. So you can still get it actually in plumbing stores.
That's I love 2-part epoxy. It's fun.
Yeah, this
stuff is really sticky, and if you don't keep it wet, it can make you cuss. That's for sure.
Well, I think it did actually. I think it did make you. That's pretty sure I heard a few colorful words. But yeah, super talented artist. Check out his stuff. And thank you to all of our sponsors. Thank you to all of our chatters. Also, thank you for the new follow. There's that wicked-looking guy.
Cool.
Ibotnicus. We appreciate that follow. That gets you entered in the possible. You are eligible for the giveaway on Tuesday night, which is our 1979 Basic Edition. Yeah, look at that guy he made. He made me a magic mouth. He did that from scratch. It's a little out of focus there, Mike.
Sorry.
That's all right. But like the detail on it, it's incredible. That's just from a pile of green goo. And like it's got the septum. It's just crazy what he's able to do from scratch. This is the guy that drills bowling balls and turns them into art. He's a multi-talented guy. So. With all that said, thank you again, everyone. Tune in, or stay tuned, rather. In fact, I'll go ahead and leave this stream on our, we'll call it the Be Right Back screen, but we'll kill the stream in about 3 minutes, and then Tim will be live with his Barbarian stream. Check him out, and then grab a few friends, and we'll see you here at 1 o'clock. What's between the... No, Tim's going 4 hours, so that would be 12. So it'd be like I guess an hour gap then, and then we'll be live at 1 o'clock today with the open Blue Box one shot. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Take care, guys. I'm going to shut my stream off. I'm trying to shut my stream off. Like, wait a minute here. What's going on?
So I've gone to our Be Right Back screen, but we still have your mics hot. So the audience can hear you, but they're not spying. They're still in there. So I want to say thank you again to Mike and to Evelyn.
Oh, no problem.
Mike, I know it was short notice for you. We just chatted on Thursday, and you said you'd come on, and I thought you did a great job. You added a lot to it. Thank you as always, Evelyn. Evelyn helped me last night with some last minute stuff as well. Just it's a community effort here for sure, and we appreciate all of it. So thank you very much, and I'll talk to you guys later.
Yeah, awesome. Love that shirt, man.
Yeah.
Unbelievable with that shirt. You took me by surprise when I saw that. I kind of puckered up a little bit. So you better give that wife of yours a hug for me and tell her I love her, because that is an incredible. That's very flattering, John. So thank
Mike,
you.
you are the only man that I would hug on behalf of my wife and tell her that you love her. But I will do that.
It's very nice of you, man. That shirt. Honestly, you got me a little emotional when I saw that.
A little bit clamped.
So thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Stay tuned. Tim coming up. Oh, and the joust. Don't forget the joust tonight.
Yes.
And Gary Con goodness all day long. Stay tuned. Stay right there. Stay tuned to this channel. Gary Con.
Gary Con.